Right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the webinar for Rise and Learn Global for this month of July. It's our pleasure to have you all here, and as we look forward to meet our new speaker today. So feel free to engage. You can write your comment on the chat and feel free to unmute and ask any question. So welcome, and I'll hand over to Deborah to start us off. Over to you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Your symposium sounds amazing. So thank you for inviting me for this kickoff. So I'll share my screen and do a bit of an intro. That doesn't, oh, there we are. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Good, just checking. So what a great thing for you to do. And we managed to snatch this photo from last year. It's such a great thing to do, to meet in person. So I'm sure you're going to have an amazing symposium. Now we're going to use Mentimeter today, which you probably already know. So pick up your phones, which is the easiest way to do it, although you can do it on any device. The easiest way is to just scan the QR code on the screen. Or you can go into menti.com, as opposed to not Mentimeter, menti.com, and put the number in. So that means that we'll be able to share our thoughts as well as just sit and listen. So I'm going to move to the next slide. If you're just still capturing that, I'm going to show it again every time we actually do the interaction. So don't worry. So a bit of an introduction. So my background is that I worked my way up in HR the hard way, as I'm sure a lot of us have. Started in the admin role, became personnel officer, did all the generalist stuff, whether it's job evaluation, supervisory training, all that stuff, became a manager. And along that route, I did my professional qualification with the CIPD, and I'm now a fellow. And then after in my HR career, as I say, worked my way up and headed an HR function for Europe, first in the IT sector and then in the pharma sector, and which was great, lots of experience, some of which I'll share with you. But actually, the part of the job I enjoyed most was the development. So I stepped out of corporate life, set up my own business, and did leadership and management development for any sector, any function for over 20 years. And then a few years ago, I started really reconnecting with HR people because obviously I'd always kept in touch. I'd always go to CIPD events. I was on the committee. I'd chat to them. And there was one pivotal conversation that I had that just made me realize that the HR function was still finding it hard to move on. And that story was at a CIPD event, went up to an HR person and said, "How are you? What are you working on? How's your day been?" That kind of thing. And she said, "Well, I've had the most frustrating day. It's salary review time. And I've had one of those meetings where you have to persuade a line manager that he can't give everybody an A rating." Negotiated that. And then I hear that he's gone back to one of his team and said, "I wanted to give you an A, but HR wouldn't let me." Now, I know that you will have been there yourself. I've been there. And it's sort of, why was that such a pivotal conversation for me? And I think it was because I'd had exactly the same experience 20 years before. And the core issue, as we know, is about accountability, really, isn't it? And how the organization sees HR. And that interaction just proved to me that the function hasn't moved on. So we decided, my business partner and I, George, we decided to look deeper into that, and we researched it. And there was this phrase that kept coming up. We know we need to change, but we don't know how. So we researched that and built that into our 7 enablers, which I'm going to show you shortly. And from that initial seed, if you like, we developed these 5 areas that we now work on with clients. Strategic alignment, we're going to be talking about that in this session. We've got a resource for you to use yourself if you choose to. HR leadership development. Being a leader in HR is particularly challenging. It's so complex. And building one HR team, I'm going to talk about that as well, because the whole function has to work together if you're going to get the most out of your resources. Business partnering development is a core of what we do. And people analytics, which is such a growing field. And these days, you really can't do without it. If we're going to raise the function into this new generation level, we have to use data. And fortunately, George, my colleague, is a guru in that area, so we're blessed. So the 7 enablers. So what we did was we were very sort of sensitive to the fact that HR gets criticized a lot. And they'll say some ridiculous things like, you see an article that says HR have failed to tackle sexual harassment. And it just makes you want to throw your hands in the air, because we know all the conversations that we have had with people about that. So how can you blame HR? So it's like, so if organizations aren't getting what they want from HR, what is it that they do want? That was the question that we asked. And we spoke to CEOs, heads of HR, HRBPs, practitioners, and we wanted to develop a framework that's measurable. So you can have some really big phrases like Dave Ulrich talks about the credible activist. And actually, he's really supportive of these enablers because he feels that we have drilled down into what that really means. What does it look like when people are operating in a way that really adds value? So I'm going to run through those quickly. And we've got loads of resources. So this blue circle reminds me to say that there are several places in my session where we've got free resources that you can dig into for your own education and some tools. And they'll be on the PDF that will come out after this session. So the enablers. First of all, perspective is really, really key. And we're going to talk about that because becoming business savvy is really important in today's HR. One of the things that we have tended to do is to get stuck in our own silo and not be fully integrated into the business. And that really is the first step. We need to understand how the business works, what makes it successful, what the risks are, so that we can position everything that we do in HR against that. So perspective helps us to broaden our thinking. Connection is probably the area that's most familiar to us as HR people. This is about building relationships that are deep enough and trusting enough for you to have robust conversations, and also make sure that you get invited to the meetings where decisions are being made. We do that through relationships. Balance is an enabler that recognizes how complex the job is. So when you think about it, in HR, we have to look across the whole organization. That in itself makes it complex. We might be looking at say, a performance issue with a sales rep, but we know that whatever we do sets a precedent across the whole organization, and we might be involved in initiatives that are across the whole organization. And so we have to balance all of those interests, and also some of them are in conflict as well, as we know. We also have the values piece. That's challenging for us in HR. We put that in balance. And also the fact that in HR, you often have to take a long-term view. And we recognize that within balance. So then imagine that you've been thinking about your perspective, your relationships, all your different stakeholders. Then you have to decide what you are actually going to do about it. So focus is about those decisions. It's about building a business case, making sure that you can prove the rationale for why you're doing it and prove the return on investment. And then push, this came out so strongly that we decided to give it an enabler all of its own, because all the business leaders said to us, we want and we need HR to stand up and speak out. We need them to explain why something isn't right. We need them to argue and say to us, well, and I know we do it. Imagine a performance issue, and you've got the employment law and so on, and we push back. We can also do that at every level strategically, make sure that we're really owning the people agenda. And then rigor is really about the gritty stuff of making sure that we do what we said we were going to do, that everything works well operationally, people get paid on time, and measures fits within rigor, that data that we talked about. Reputation as well, we realized was really important, because HR people, we tend to be quite humble, and there is the issue of confidentiality. And I think we get into the habit of not telling people about the great work that we do. And we do need to manage HR's reputation consciously, because it is a key enabler. It gets you into the room. So as I say, do explore. There's loads about them on the website. I really went to town on writing loads of stuff. So if you're interested in that, and we've got a profiling tool as well. So let's get on to this topic now of next generation HR and HR at a crossroads. And I really do feel this. It's like we got our first sort of kick during COVID. And I think organizations really valued HR more as a result of COVID, because we kept businesses going. And as a result, there were some HR leaders that I know that got their place on the leadership team because of the way their team really stepped up during COVID and proved their value. On the other hand, the workload was enormous, and for some people, it was the toughest time and they haven't really recovered. And now we've got AI, we've got hybrid working, we've got talent shortages, we've got really strategic people challenges. And as usual, Dave Ulrich summed it up really well with this graphic, which I'm sure he didn't create. This is like a classic sort of philosophical point. There comes a time, and we can think about this in our personal lives as well. There comes a time when we know We've got to get a grip on something or it will slip away. And I think in HR, this is why this title for your symposium is so good. We've got choices. You have got choices about grasping the opportunities and really standing up and standing out, or letting it slide and carrying on like you've been carrying on. Having said that, I know it's hard. It really is hard. And actually, that's what our business is about. The absolute core of what we want to do with Enable HR is build the relationship between HR and the business, because that's the way you open the door. It's the relationship. So in fact, a great saying that I heard, I don't know who said it, but I can't credit them, but you might want to write this down. We manage through meetings, but we lead through relationships. If you want to change something, you need to build the relationship with the people who have the key to that change. Whereas in meetings, you've got your agenda, haven't you? You've got like a to-do list. You work through the to-do list in the meeting. You may not actually change anything. And real decisions are made outside meetings. And we can get caught out. If we think the decision is going to be made in the meeting and we make we build a brilliant presentation, we put so much work into the slides, and then we go into the meeting and we get the feeling that people's minds are already made up. And that will be because other people have done the relationship building and the advocacy before the meeting. And so that's something that we need to do as well. And I've got a tool for you to use for that later on. So I'm going to ask you this as a question in a moment. So another chance for you to get the Menti instructions into your phone or other device if you haven't yet. So this arrow is a really good way of looking at the different levels at which we operate in our role. Now, actually, all of us will sometimes have to clear up the mess after client groups manage people matters poorly. You might be the CHRO and you know you're still going to have to do that sometimes, but you don't want to be doing it all the time. And then the next level up, responding well operationally, so you're getting the job done, but you always feel like you're in catch-up mode, never quite on top of things, feeling like you're having to respond rather than get on top. And then in this green zone, you're involved early in executing HR activities that support the business strategy, but maybe weren't involved in the decision. So you might be saying, well, yeah, okay, I can go off and get these software engineers for you, but I wish you'd told me 6 months earlier because I could have been building a pipeline to make it easier and quicker. And then the orange zone, out in front, involved in strategic decisions with people at the top of the agenda. To achieve that, you actually need to be in the room when business leaders are thinking, as well as at the top table. So I've asked this in many, many cultures. You can be completely honest where you feel you spend most of your time. So the mentee will invite you to put a dot somewhere. Where do you spend most of your time? It's completely anonymous, so you can be honest. So if you're not yet into Menti, you can see how to get in at the top of the page, menti.com. When you go into there, the front page will invite you to put in a code, and it's those numbers there. I'll give you a bit longer. Where do you feel you spend most of your time? Well, even though we haven't got that many responses, I can share with you that that's pretty classic for wherever people are in the world. Most people are in the blue area. And of course, that's not the healthiest place to be because there's stress in that. And also, there is wasted potential because you know that you could be doing more if you could get on top of things. And most of, in fact, all really, every single HR team that I work with feels under-resourced. And so we have to make a business case for more resources. And we'll talk more about that too. So thank you for participating in that. So here's our agenda now. And when I was writing this as a list, I actually realized it was a cycle, a virtuous circle of raising the level at which you operate so that you can achieve next generation HR. So first, we're going to look at building business savvy and credibility. And so my recommendation to you is that you do that as a, like a background intellectual exercise, talk to people, actually make that a piece of work. That then helps you to shift relationships with business leaders because you'll be talking more about the business. Then that enables you to advocate more effectively for how HR creates value. That in turn helps you to build your reputation and influence. And then a great thing to do is to get your HR team lined up behind business priorities. So, business savvy and credibility. Now, it's just occurred to me that I forgot to mention when I did my intro slide that we have a strategic partner in Africa. I'm sure you saw his photo, Sam Kello. He's going to be at the conference, so do look him out. He's a great partner for us to work with locally in your region. So, business savvy. I want to share with you this amazing data. This is so strong. Gartner did this, I think it was a couple of years ago now, actually, because so you're imagining a conversation with your CEO. You want to get more resources or you want to get them to listen to you. You want to get your place at the table. You want to get them to talk to you more early. You want to partner with them strategically. And they'll say, well, what's the point? What do you mean? Well, for a start, you need to explain what that means. We will be talking about that later. And also they will want to know why, the business why of strategic partnering. And Gartner have calculated this. This is so helpful. So let's go through it. So they're saying strategically effective business partnering can improve employee performance in business units by 19 to 25%. Now, we understand that, don't we? Because we know that whether it's our performance management systems, whether it's us coaching line managers, being around there, making sure that managers are managing performance well, we know that has an impact. So it's amazing that Gartner have quantified that. The link to their report is down here at the bottom. Now we're looking at retention. Retention is a great way of proving value to the business. I'm going to come back to that as well. But they've got a number on it here. 24% impact on actually that's they can improve retention by 24%, I'm guessing that means. And then we've got impact on revenue. So they're quantifying the fact that actually when HR is allowed to do its work, you can get 7% more business through the door. Amazing. We know it, but they've proved it. So put all those numbers together and they've calculated that strategic partnering can deliver 9% profit. So imagine saying to your CEO, if you partner with us strategically, we can add 9% to the bottom line. Now, their next question will be, well, how? What do you mean? So I was having a conversation with a CEO recently, and he had a very old-fashioned approach to HR. So I said to him, do you realize that HR is a function that can create value? He said, no, I've never heard that. I said, would you like some of that? And he said, yes. I want to talk to you again about what you mean and how the function can do that. So that then opened the door to go back with some numbers. And in that organization's case, it isn't actually very difficult because they've got terrible absence. If they reduce their absence by 10%, they would add a big figure to the bottom line. So I'm urging you, this is where push comes in, you know, that enabler that's about really standing up for HR and what we can deliver for the business. Also, Gartner talk about functional excellence. And here they give us two things to look at, which is it's really useful because they're saying you've got to be efficient. We know that. We've got to pay people the right money. We've got to run our systems really well. We know that. We know how to do that. And also, HR's efforts have got to be aligned with what the organization needs. Now, this, I think, is a big mental shift for HR people. We tend to do what we think the organization needs rather than what it actually needs. I'm going to come back to that as well. But I wanted to give you these statistics because you might think in your region that you're behind the US or the UK or Europe, but you're really not. Every single market in the world is struggling with this. So you can see here that only 99% of HR functions, this is a global survey with global corporations, are achieving functional excellence. So it's a great time for all of us to really take that decision on that at that crossroads to start pushing or keep pushing. So I like this analogy. It works for me, and I put it in my book, and people quite often mentioned it to me. When you go abroad, so you're going to be going to Rwanda next week if you aren't there already. And if you're like me, you've got a 3-pin plug. I go to a country, I went to Italy a while ago, they've got a 2-pin plug there. And I don't arrive there and say, these stupid Italians, they should have a 3-pin socket. You wouldn't dream of doing that. We know that we have to take a plug adapter. We know that it's on us to adapt to the way that Rwanda or Italy operate their electricity system. It's arrogant to think otherwise. In HR, what we tend to do is create solutions, interventions, and then try and plug them in to a business that isn't ready for them, wasn't consulted about them, maybe doesn't even think they need them. The timing could be all wrong. Sometimes we roll things out without even asking whether it's a busy time operationally, and they're already overworked. So this image is to remind us that we have to adapt to the business, learn about the business, ask about the business, so that the work that we do will land well. If we don't, the bottom line is we're actually wasting our resources. And I've been there. I engineered, I created, I was so invested in it, a competency framework. And it was very elegant. I had graphics done for it. There was a marvelous booklet. I was so proud of it. And then came the day where I was rolling it out. Beware of that phrase, rolling it out, because you could be like a steam roller. It didn't land well. I presented it to my markets in different parts of Europe. In Germany, the guy said, we don't need this and we're not going to do it. In Italy, the guy said, oh, yes, Debbie, but never did it because there was no consultation. In Spain, actually, the guy said, oh, do you know we do this already? And he had created something completely fit for purpose for his sales reps that had different levels of skill. So really, it was a waste. It was a waste. We cannot afford to waste our resources. And consulting and partnering strategically is the answer to that. I know it's easy for me to say that when you've got inboxes full of things that you need to sort out, but I do want to challenge you and I want to inspire you. So in this section, we're building business savvy and credibility. And in the PDF, you'll find a link to this resource to easily download. It's a business acumen quiz. It's got questions in it like these. What is the business we are in? Why does it perform the way it does? Which means, how do we make money? How do we lose money? And then you can think about HR's role in that. So you might realize, okay, well, we're losing customers. How can I leverage HR's expertise to help the business retain more customers? You could probably do something quite quickly about that. Use that to build your reputation. Get your way into the decision-making room. The start point really is understanding what drives business success. So one of the best things I ever did in my job was spend a day with a sales rep. I learned so much. So this was in a pharmaceutical company, so I'd get quite bogged down in all that. It's really, it's very clever stuff. It's quite technical. I didn't understand half of it. But then you go and watch a sales rep talk to a doctor, and that's the front line. And that makes it all make sense. And you know that a really important thing to do is to help that sales rep do an amazing job. What is our business model? How do we allocate money? Do we invest enough in customer service so that we retain customers? Are we investing enough in technology because that's what our customers really value? So this term business model is really interesting. And how do the financials work? I urge you to make a friend in finance. Make a friend in finance, have a buddy who will explain the numbers to you. I'm embarrassed to say I never did that. I had a fear of spreadsheets, to be honest. I would look at them and they would just blur. Now I know how important it is to understand the numbers, because then you can, well, it helps you to understand the business model. It helps you to understand how you make money, where you lose money, and you can get into the business conversation, whoever your client group is. So once you've got your head sort of deeper into the business, it does make it easier to initiate conversations with business leaders where you're talking about the business more and HR less. So here's a question. What keeps your business leaders awake at night? Now, this is a really great question. You might think of a particular stakeholder. What keeps them awake at night? If you can find that out and relate that to your HR work, you will get the budget for it. So I'm going to ask you the question. Which concerns do you think keep your business leaders awake? So do participate on Menti. So go into menti.com and use the code 13611176. So I can see we've got 16 people logged into Menti. So it would be great if you would, it's completely anonymous, so you don't have to be shy. Which concerns do you think keep your business leaders awake? Great, keep going. This is going to build into one of those amazing word clouds. Yeah, we've got a really nice mix here. Yeah, KPIs. Good, we've got some good business language coming through here. Thank you. This looks great. Keep going. So this is brilliant because you are spot on with these big ones. It's the bottom line. It's productivity. It's growth. It's numbers. It's profit, cash flow, KPIs. Really, really good. Because the last time I did this, which was actually only yesterday, we had a lot of people talking about retention and well-being. So it was a European workshop that I ran yesterday. they were less on the business line than you guys are. So I congratulate you for that, because we know that our business leaders get retention and well-being, but it won't keep them awake at night. It'll be the bottom line, productivity and growth that keep them awake. So that's brilliant. Thank you. So I've got a suggestion for you. This is something that I do with clients, but actually you can do it yourself, because the bottom line is that actually you don't know what keeps your particular stakeholders awake at night, and wouldn't it be good to find out? And also to create an opportunity for HR to learn more about the business. So I run this thing called an alignment workshop, and it's set up so that we invite a selection of business leaders, different functions, maybe different levels, different backgrounds, to come into the room. It could be a physical room, or quite often it's a virtual room, and give them half an hour each, so that you don't have to get them all for a whole morning or a whole afternoon. Get them to prepare, and they love doing it, and say to them, we would like you to tell us what's happening in your part of the business, to tell us what your priorities are at the moment, tell us what you're most worried about, tell us what keeps you awake at night. And the instruction to the HR people in the room is actually only to ask questions about the business. HR is off the agenda. This meeting is not about HR. It's about the business. They learn so much. So get maybe 5 or 6 business leaders to do that. And then after that, sit down with that HR team and say, well, what did you hear? What did you hear your business leaders say? And their language then will come out in a much more business sounding way. They'll be getting the language. We need HR people to speak the language of the business. Now, the other thing is that this is a really, really good launch pad for subsequent conversations, because any of the HR team in the room, one of the guys might say something and they think, I'd like to know more about that. They can set up a meeting to do exactly that. You were telling me about this this issue you've got with technical expertise, or even how you actually manage to make a profit because you're having difficulty managing your costs. I'd like to find out more about that. So it can be a real turning point for listening to business leaders. And then you can actually pick some topics that you know those business leaders want you to work on. So then you'll be working on what the business actually wants you to work on, rather than what you think they need you to work on. It's a mindset shift. So that was a suggestion. This is a technique. So when I began to do business partner development, I really wanted to understand why it can be so hard. It's not easy, especially if, let's say, you've been in the HRBP role for a while, or you've come into the role and somebody was there before you. Maybe it was more of an admin role and a support role, and you're given this job title, business partner, and you want to change the relationship. It's actually quite tricky, because, of course, your stakeholder quite fairly has got an expectation of you that you set. So they're expecting what you've always given them. And actually, we in HR decide we want to give them something else. So we do need to explain it. And also use some behaviors and change the conversation in a way that will turn it into partnering. So these two key themes came out of that research with HR heads when I said to them, tell me about the HRBPs that are really doing a great job. And she said to me, one really key learning was that a business leader had said to her, I love it when I've got a meeting with an HRBP because it means I got a chance to talk about the future. That's great, isn't it? We know that in HR, we need a longer term horizon. And that stakeholder knew that HR was helping them to develop that. So they must have been talking about the future. So that's one of them. And the second is the point I've already made. So evaluate in your conversation. So next time you're in a conversation with a stakeholder, evaluate this. To what extent are you speaking about, asking about, and directing the conversation towards the future or rather than the present, and towards the business rather than HR? And I've got a model here that helps you to navigate the progress that you're making, because going back to the point I made about changing expectations of the role, you don't achieve that in one conversation. You achieve it conversation by conversation. So in the first stage, it may be, especially if you're in that blue, no, I mean the red, don't I? Thinking about the arrow, you had the red thing at the back, which is saying, you're clearing up problems. We always have to do that. A line manager comes in the room and says, so-and-so's just resigned. You need to find somebody for me. You know that you have got to do a recruitment piece. You know you've got to develop a solution. Within that, you're going to uphold your policy and values. You've got to manage stakeholders. It's completely appropriate. And also, if you want to change the conversation, and actually I'm sure a lot of you already do this anyway, you want to learn more about why this is happening. What is the impact on that person of losing someone? What's changing in the business? Does the job spec need to change? I think you're going to be totally ahead of me in what I'm saying here. You will dig into it. So we can deepen our business understanding. What are the implications of this? What happens in the business? What might have led to this? Again, what are your business priorities right now? Because they might have an impact. So then on the time orientation, we're actually quite good with trends and insights demographically. You're probably able to say to them, well, with Gen Z, I read something interesting yesterday. Gen Z are the generation who least like remote work. That was a surprise. So we do get this data, and we can use this data to say to people, we need to be aware of this trend. There is a real skill shortage in this area, so we need to plan ahead when we need these people. We've got AI going on. And also align with business strategy. Now here, a simple thing to do, that again, I wish I'd done, is to build an HR calendar. All I mean is have your months of the year and map out what the business is doing in each month. So you might know that The end of the financial year, for example, is the end of December. So that means that probably in September or even August, you should be in the room talking to them about the people stuff that you might want them to put in the budget. And when they're really busy operationally, put that in the calendar and don't ask them to do any kind of adoption of new processes or whatever during that time. And you can build an HR calendar that really helps you and helps your client groups. So if you are doing these things, you're anticipating and you're learning about the business, then you will reach a point where you are partnering strategically, because you'll have conversations that will become quite creative. Well, now I understand this. Now I understand this thing that you're trying to do. We could do that. And they might say, now I realize you've got so much to contribute in this area. I'd like you to run a session with my team. I'd like more training on how to manage performance or how to manage absence. They'll be pulling you in. So that is strategic partnering. So when you can get to that point, that's when you'll be in the room when the decisions are being made. And that's when you can deliver more impact on the profit line. And you will be able to justify it. So you can imagine then that if you've done that, you're in a really good position to advocate more effectively for how HR creates value. And I want to tell a story to make a point. So Tom here, he is a software engineer who joined a year ago. You know, it took 9 months to find this guy. He's only been there a year and he's just resigned. Nightmare. So of course you might be in the respond box here thinking, oh, I'm going to have to go back to that agency. I'm going to have to find a replacement. But let's explore this. So Rabina is Tom's boss. She's the kind of person everybody says, oh, Rabina, she's great. She delivers. She did this great thing for the customer. She developed this great idea. She's great in meetings. But you know that actually she's not a great line manager. You know that the guy before Tom only lasted for 8 months. So you can see there's a problem. So you've got some choices how you're going to handle it. So let's look at this numbers thing. There is now excellent data about the cost of losing key talent. Deloitte looked into it, Shrum got some data, McKinsey got some data. And if it's somebody who's hard to find, high potential, valuable talent, it really does work out at twice salary. You add up, obviously, the recruitment costs, the onboarding costs, the time of managers and other people to bring them up to speed. And in fact, it takes between a year and 18 months before somebody is fully productive. So to lose them at that point is really, really bad news. And I use the analogy of a piece of computer equipment. Say you've got this flashy computer, everybody's got used to using it, they've been on the training courses, it's working really well, you've had it a year, and somebody, imagine this is a physical computer, actually picks it up, drops it on the floor and breaks it. There would be serious repercussions. When somebody leaves, sometimes there are no repercussions. It's not right. We know it's not right, but we have to explain it in numbers. And that's what we can do. So when we think about partnering strategically, so let's just go back to this heading, next generation HR and the enabler push. Organizations need HR to stand up and say, this is costing the business $160,000 that this guy left. We need to avoid this happening again. And the person we might need to say that to is actually Rubina's boss. So here's Rubina. There are 3 teams. She's got 3 Toms in her team, and the other 2 have got 4 Toms. No, they haven't. Altogether, there are 10 Toms. So Dan, he's got 10 Toms, and actually he loses at least 2 every year. They leave. So that means that attrition is costing $250,000 every year. He's probably never ever worked that out. He doesn't realize that he's throwing money down the drain. And you also know from your engagement survey data that you can actually, you probably tried to talk to Dan before about his engagement data. You know there are issues in his team. You know that actually you could probably run some workshops with Shalini, Rubina and Mark to help them with their line management. And if you use this number, asking for, say, 10K to do those workshops is going to look like a very, very wise investment. So what we need to do is to get good with numbers. And I've got a template for this. If anybody wants it, just email me or message me and I'll send it over. All it does, it's just columns saying, what is the problem? How much is the problem costing us? And get all the numbers in there. Versus what do we need to do to fix the problem? What will that cost? And what are the benefits of fixing that problem? Now, if we were in any other function, we would probably have to do that anyway. So in HR, we need to use the same business thinking. So here's another technique. Again, it's just got 2 dimensions. And in push, again, we talk about advocacy and inquiry. Now, I know that HR people are really good at asking questions. So I urge you to ask more questions about the business. And also advocacy, we need to get better at that. Why we do what we do, how it impacts the business, how it helps the business make more money. We need to explain. And that means being really clear. One of the toughest things in my career was when my boss, who was the VP of HR over in New York, said to me, you no longer have an automatic seat at the table. Now, we had been quite hierarchical. So if I went to, say, France and said, I'm here because Keith wants us to do this, the country manager in France would just cooperate. They took the country managers out. We went matrix. And it was like, whoa, it was hard. I have to admit, it was hard. But it made me go out to my stakeholder groups and tell them about what we did in HR. And I did I put together a set of slides. That took a while because I had to really get my own thinking together. What is it that we do and why do we do it? Went round with my slides and they said, we had no idea you did all that. And it opened the door. So that was a bit of very conscious advocacy. So I really recommend that to anybody to just go and do that. Let us tell you what we do in HR. And if you're combining that with questions, tell me more about how that plays out in your part of the business, and then it turns into a very powerful conversation. So it needs good skills. And here I just want to tap into beliefs as well. We know what we stand for in HR, and we can be proud of that. And using data when we're advocating is incredibly powerful. And what we're finding at the moment with clients is that they've got data all over the place because there are discrete systems. None of the IT companies seem to have developed a way of making this easier for HR. You've either got to go the whole hog with Workday or the whole hog with SAP. And mostly we find our clients don't want to come away from, they like Culture Amp, they like their HR tech, they like their L&D system, but they do want to get the data in one place. And so that's something that we do with clients. It isn't as expensive as you would think. This is what George is an absolute guru at. He'd hold your hand through the whole process and end up with a dynamic dashboard where you can interrogate it, look at, if we look at that for millennials, if we look at that for women, if we look at that for people within who are due to retire, what does this data look, exit reasons, and also a very cost-effective way of getting data. This sort of symbolizes continuous listening. There are really easy ways to do pulse surveys, quick surveys with a part of your population. The point about this is data is persuasive and business leaders like data. So if you tell them 10 people have left because their manager wasn't very good, and the fact that we've lost 10 people has cost us X $100,000, and you want to get the budget for something that costs $20,000, you can imagine they're going to say yes. So we've got to get smarter at that, and we can. So build your reputation and influence. I want to remind you about this, to be fully conscious of the reputation that you're creating. So I've got a Menti question here for you. What do you want to be known for? So imagine HR are not in the room and somebody there is speaking up for you. You don't want them to say, they're paper pushers. They just say no. They get in the way. They're always putting obstacles in the place. What do you want to be known for? So again, it's anonymous. Great. Yeah. Keep going. I love it. There you are in East Africa. And here I am in the southwest of England. And I can just pull in your input just like that. I'm probably showing my age that I still find these things remarkable. Brilliant stuff. It's like a vision, isn't it? What we have on the page here is a vision for how HR can be. All of those things I'm sure you're already delivering. And as we move the function forward, you can do even more. Brilliant. Thank you. So then the next question is, we do want to be known for delivering value. Who decides? So I've got another mentee coming up for you, so grab your phones. Who decides what value looks like? Is it employees? Is it line managers? Is it senior business leaders? Is it senior HR leaders? Is it HR BPs? Who decides what value looks like? I'm sure we'll get a mix here. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so now I think the HRBPs have got a very good idea of what value looks like when they're implementing stuff. Employees, you're right, they have to decide to join, they have to decide to stay. When we think about next generation HR, however, we have got to focus on senior business leaders. They're going to decide where HR fits on the balance sheet. So when you need to get the budget for something and you want to make it clear that you are adding value, it's the CEO's opinion that matters. And that's something that we've got to be very clear about. So this is the tool. Now, I realize I'm a bit tight for time now. This is the tool that I mentioned, and there's a download here. So if I go a bit quickly here, you can easily pick up from the download. When you think about asking your senior business leaders what they really need, this is a process that you can follow using the free download. And we have an online survey that can be used. What is the business context? Within that context, what is it that's most important for HR to focus on? What are HR's capabilities in those areas? So, and therefore, what are HR's priorities? Because then you can say, well, you said you wanted this, and therefore we did this, and these are the results. Because once you've gone through this process here, you will get the budget. And it works really well because, and this is how you can do it yourselves, that the self-drive guide explains, or you can run it as a survey. You can take this into a meeting and say to a line manager or a leader, how important right now within today's business context is recruiting and onboarding? They might say, well, it's a 7. How effective are HR at recruiting and onboarding talent? They might say a 6, for example. And we ask HR the same question. And what you get is a different view. And the really productive conversation that you then have is, why is the view different? So I was working with a client in Ireland where the business was really critical of the recruitment. It turned out that the thing they found most difficult was the approval process. For getting people approved, they actually thought that the TA people did a good job. So if you ask the question, you can dig into it. And also we have to be, when you think about your reputation, we as a function have to be trusted. And so this Trusted Advisor book by David Maister came up with this formula that's really useful. People trust us when we're credible. They can believe what we say. When we're reliable, we do what we said we were going to do. And when they feel that they can talk to us and share things with us. All of that will be completely undermined if they think that we're doing things for our own goals. So this takes me back to when people say, oh, I've had to do this because HR want me to do it. Whatever it takes, we have to show them why they're doing it, because they need to do it, because of the value it will add to them. So finally, in fact, I've got a whole webinar about this next week. So I'm going to go quickly through this because of the time. But if you would like to, please sign up. There's been a lot of talk about the operating model. And really, the quick answer is your stakeholders need to know the answer to who do I need to talk to about that. They're not interested in a complicated operating model. And actually, it's the mortar, not the bricks. It's the relationships more than the different teams. And the Ulrich model that you probably know, he distinguished between centers of excellence, or I prefer the word expertise, where you've got your specialists in things like OD and reward. You've got your employee-facing people who sort out the little problems. So that might be your shared services. But then you've got your business-facing people who are your HRBPs. And this operating model has come under criticism. But really, the only reason for that is because the three legs have become further apart. The three dimensions of HR still make good sense, but we need to overlap them. We need to bring everyone together. So I put together this build on the Ulrich model, which I'm happy to say he really likes. And what I'm focusing on here is, first of all, the central thing that everybody needs to unite around a shared purpose. And the question needs to be, will it make the boat go faster? This is our amazing Olympic rowing team who won 5 gold medals and this was their question when they were looking at their equipment or their training. Will it make the boat go faster? We have to keep thinking about that. So the overlaps show the questions that you can ask between the teams. And so really, I want to go full circle with this, because when we're talking about really learning about the business and what the business needs, we should start with the business problem. Business leads don't fall neatly into HR specialisms. So we tend to think something is a TA problem or an OD problem. What I urge you to do is to articulate the challenge as a business problem, look at it broadly, and collaborate to find the best solution. So there we are. Let me ask you this final question. What has had impact on your thinking today? So I apologise that I've overrun. And also, any questions, please put them in the chat. If you're able to stay on, we can still take some questions. Oh, that's interesting. Another recommendation, Mastery by Robert Greene. Great. How to be closer strategically to the business rather than being operational in HR. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, the alignment session with business leaders, you won't believe how impactful that is. And you can run it yourself. And if you'd like to have a chat with me, I'm happy to give you more advice on how to run that. Or do it for you, obviously, if you have the budget. HR alignment with organization needs. I think this is the nub of the crossroads. Are we going to continue doing what we think is right? Or are we going to take the turning that says we are going to change direction and focus more on what the organization needs? Speaking business language, talking more about the business. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, the cost of top talent leaving in less than... Dreadful, isn't it? Oh, good. You like the one HR team model? You're very welcome to join next week. I've actually got a recording. I think we might have put it at the end of these slides, actually. A recording that we've got. Knowing the business well. Well, they are brilliant takeaways. Thank you for that. So I am going to stop sharing now and let my colleagues here in the team decide whether you want questions or whether actually we're out of time.
We have questions. We can do a quick brief. So I have one. Maybe I can read it out for you from Faith. She's asking, how do we contact you? That one will. And can we get a template you talked about?
Oh, the business planning template. Yes. Would you connect with me on LinkedIn and then I can send it to you there?
Nice. Yes, and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered. So you're going to get the presentation as well.
Yes. And we'll capture the Menti results within that.
Mhm. Okay, so I don't see any other question.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yes, Faith.
I wasn't talking about today's recording. I'm talking about the class next week that she mentioned. She'd explain more about the model.
Yes. Webinar that's on next week. I can't remember whether we put the link in the slides, but I can send both of those things to you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And I think it might be on the end of the slides. Let me have a look. Yeah, so when you get the slides, you've got an invitation to the webinar next week, how to build a united business-led HR team. Also the webinar recording of the sort of step one that I did. What I did there was actually look at what the different organizations are saying about different HR operating models. And spoiler alert, I can tell you that most of them are really based on the three-legged model. Also, there is a coaching offer so that if you would like to do the profile and have a 1-hour coaching session with me, there's a special offer for that of £100. So I'm sure you'll be doing mental calculations for your own currency. So doing the profile, it's like an online workshop, really. There are lots of resources behind it. So I'd love to see you next week at that webinar, and do please connect. All of you, please connect on LinkedIn.
Right.
Well, thank you, Betty. Okay. Shall we let you get back to your jobs?
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you so much, Deborah, for the great presentation. Good content, so much knowledge and good takeaways for the HR professionals and anyone in the corporate space. So we appreciate everyone who joined the session, and we will be reaching out to share the content for this session. Thanks so much, Deborah, and we appreciate the time and the content.
Thank you. And do have a great time at the symposium. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.